So, guys, I want to review episode 8 of Elfin, the beginning. And this is actually considered the most controversial and also the most famous episode of the series because of the animal abuse that happens in it. And it starts with what happens is that, at the ending of the seventh episode, Nana attacks Lucy. And this is kind of like the aftermath of that Nana actually gets hit by Coda for attacking Lucy. He gives her that five fingers to the face, Rick James bitch slap to Nana. And it's definitely like hard for Nana because a lot of people just don't see the other side of Lucy. That Lucy is not just new, somebody developmentally delayed. They see like Lucy, the other side of violent sociopathic character. Lucy is a sociopath because if I have it correctly, a sociopath is somebody who develops psychopathic tendencies because of things that happen to them in their life, based on what we see later in the episode. And the other thing that happens is that they show you a little bit about what's going to happen at the headquarters. They're going to release Diclonius 37 to go after Lucy. And the reason why they do that is obviously, you're trying to set up the ending of the whole series because they bring out 37, who's like the strongest Diclonius, and they have them, and there's a face-off with Lucy at the end of the series. And then what happens is that, when Lucy's in bed, because what happened when she does get attacked, and she frequently suffers from headache and head trauma. Like, her weakness is that she suffers from head trauma. And she develops like fever-like tendencies. So like while she's in bed, it kind of appears like a flashback or maybe like a dream sequence and flashback that show us her childhood. And what happens is that she was abandoned. She was in an orphanage, and in the orphanage she dealt with a lot of bullying, and she was around kids with very sociopathic tendencies. So what happens is that there is a bunch of boys, and one of them actually, took her, took her, like, her school book and her books and covered it with, like, spoiled milk. And then there's this girl that helped her out. And then what happens is that Lucy finds a puppy as a child. She takes care of the puppy. She tells her friend about it. And then what happens is that it's later revealed that her friend told those boys about the puppy. And then what happens is that it's revealed that her female friend, as a child, she did that just to be sadistic. I think that, for pretending to be her friend, because you see her kind of having a small grin. And I think that kind of gives away that, she was also somebody who was horrible as well. They all had horrible lives, so they just take it out on Lucy. And the controversial scene is that, like these kids, like one of them is just, they're all like, just having like these most evil grin, just beating the dog to death with a metal vase, and you see like it's blood and all over the place. And then Lucy says the famous lines, like the only ones that are not human is you. And then she creates those Vesper arms and she slashes them all up into pieces, and it's super bloody and all over the place. And I think that there's a lot of people who have a lot of different feelings about this episode. I think that first of all, I think what I would say is that it is kind of cathartic because obviously, when so many horrible things happen to the Diclonius through the series, that you're almost happy, like, it's a hurrah, Lucy's getting her revenge on these fuckers, really. And I think a lot of people will feel that way. It's almost like the movie The Crow, where the Crow gets revenge on all the people that did horrible things to him, really. So it's definitely a good, like, origin story of Lucy, but it also explains why she has sociopathic tendencies. And I think that it's the old message of like how violence begets violence. That's why we should all treat others with kindness and respect, really. But also, it's kind of thematic of what happened a lot during the 2000s and 90s, that there was a lot of kids who would be violent, or sometimes you may have kids that would kill animals. And back during like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, there wasn't a lot of education on that to say, okay, well, that kid must be a sociopath or a psychopath, and they may be influencing other kids. Like, I think like this kid who killed the puppy, he clearly has a lot of issues, really. And I think that people overlook it, or maybe the teacher found out, they won't really care. They'll just be like, oh, well, you know what, you know what it is really, like let's just forget about it. But nowadays, like they'll easily put that kid in like a like very severe psychiatric ward, So there's a theme about um definitely mental health, but also just, definitely how Lucy was created. Like she became a monster because other people were treating her like a monster. Like she was more like Nana when she was younger, but she just met so many just horrible and violent people that she decided to just turn that way. And it's very tragic. But sometimes it's like the old saying too, like monsters. People are not born monsters. People are created as monsters. Um, I think another thing about this is ultimately the realism, man. I hate saying this, but this is realistic because obviously there are people, like from all ages that may have, antisocial tendencies, can be prone to violence and prone to like, sexual violence and other things like that, like definitely this fits in the realm of reality because I know like some people may say that this is cartoonish. The other thing is the depiction of animal abuse. And I think that it does kind of run into the category of, it is offensive, it is taboo, and it's like what the director is doing. Like every single episode, there has to be something very controversial. You had kissing cousins. You actually, in the next episode, there's a scene where Lucy and Coda as children are bathing. I know in Japanese culture, nudity is a little, they're okay. There's more like leeway with nudity. In another episode, you had Lucy fight Nana, and she's ripping her body apart. So like every single episode of this series, it seems like they try to like have something that with shock value. And in this episode, it is the animal abuse. But I think the one thing that I would say is that for the level of your shock value has to meet the level of the story, and I think that this episode is kind of the best episode because it's not thrown in there to be disturbing. There is a backstory, and it's kind of really built within this world of Elfin Lied that the human characters are. There's many human characters that are indeed sociopathic, and there are many characters in this world that are allowed to be violent as possible. Like I think this world that people just have like the more the more the bloodthirst and the bloodlust is definitely way stronger in this world, in the world of Elfin Lied. So it does feel realistic, and I also think that definitely, you give that dimension to Lucy, and that really helps her character because before then we don't really understand why she is evil. All they do for character sympathy is make her Mew and Lucy, but in this character is saying, okay, well, the Lucy, the character that goes around killing people, now we kind of see her backstory, and it's a very traumatic backstory, so it's definitely well written, and because it's definitely well written. It's also very thematic because I think that enough happens to her to justify her behavior. Even though murder is wrong, but obviously when you've just been holding on to your patience for so long, and then you turn violent, it is what it is really. And I think that that's also the other thing, is that I've been bullied a lot when I was younger, and I remember. Personal story. I remember when I went to a summer camp and I was being bullied a lot, and I threatened to bring a weapon, and I actually came very close to bringing a weapon to the summer camp, but there was something in my head that actually just told me that maybe I was better off taking that weapon and killing myself, or taking that weapon and putting it back, and I put that weapon back really. Into my parents' kitchen. But I remember like how I felt very angry because when that happened, when that happened, I remember my dad having a call. They wanted to throw me out of summer camp, and the camp counselors made a very big like deal about my behavior, like how I would have extra money, or I would be like asking people for money so I can like buy junk food. And they said like I'm weird and socially awkward, and other things like that. Like there always seemed to be, a shift in taking accountability off the bullies and siding with me, because some of them were just friends with the camp counselors for years and years and years, really. So a good old boy system. But I reached my nerve, and I think that a lot of people feel that way who are bullied. That you want to just, to quote Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction, I want to strike vengeance upon thee, with great vengeance and furious anger. But ultimately, two wrongs don't make a right, really. But um, but I do think that the violence is justified, the backstory is justified. But I also feel that one thing that you do with this catharsis is that also um, you make it really really good in a way that that honestly, when you have the animal abuse, it becomes people don't see it as taking it too far, really, because you actually have the characters suffer for their actions, really. It kind of reminds me of what people say about Family Guy versus South Park. Like one of the reasons why I think people like South Park more is because Cartman, in most cases, suffers for his bad behavior, where Peter Griffin gets away with it way too much. But wrong is wrong, really. But I would also kind of say that another thing about all this, that I do have to kind of say is that definitely, it's very horrible what happens to Lucy, and it's definitely very horrible the environment. But it also is just a reminder that sometimes the biggest monsters in this world is human beings. Like as they said, like as the joke goes in Family Guy, you put all the creatures in together. You put all the animals on this earth together in a machine, and you come up and you set it to come up with the most evil creature that's ever lived. The most evil creature that's ever lived is human beings, because of how evil we are to each other, and it kind of goes with and I think that's one of the themes of this whole series is that human beings can be really evil, and we can justify our evil behavior, or sometimes we do evil things and we don't digest it. We just kind of like find that one person or that one thing to target, and we don't realize the impact of our behavior. And we can turn people into monsters. We can turn Lucy, the kind-hearted Diclonius, into a sociopathic killer. So always be nice to people. But very controversial episode. Definitely, as I said, even if you're going through hard times, you should be good to others. You should not destroy others, because sometimes you can destroy the last bit of good in somebody and get nothing more than a monster in return. Lucy the Diclonius.